Hello, group. I got my Dieter outfit today because I'm going to change the subject. This relates to Gaia's humanism, but I'm kind of going off on something else that I've been wanting for some time to talk about. I wanted to do a live stream on using OBS, Streamlabs, and YouTube Studio, and I'm just a mess. I can't figure this stuff out. I don't know why, if it's the age or what. So if anybody cares to give me the heads up and show me the ropes on how to get started on the basics. I watch tutorials and everything. Anyways, let me get to what. So I'm just going to record this and then upload it like I usually do. Um, I've been, like many people, interested in NASA, science and technologies, and presentations on transmissions like TED regarding what people believe are their views, or rather their views on life elsewhere. And sometimes I just now saw one that gave me the spark, sort of say, to do this recording. And so I'm gonna post it on their comment box in honor of his presentation, because he basically says the truth. But I don't think it's coming through. I don't think it's getting through to people, because if people really understood what this means, we would be a little, shocked or breathless, or really stunned as to what now, or what are we going to do, or what, realizing ominously what it means. The news is beyond anything that would be entertainment or science and technology. It would be something truly significant to human civilization, and would start affecting all the philosophies and moralities that we have always entertained or developed about human civilization. It would be like pressing the reset button, and give us reason to ponder and reconsider everything that we thought we believed about our own existence. Not to mention disarming and diffusing questions like, what are we, or why are we here, and all those. Anyways, basically, the video that prompted me to want to record this is, let me go to history and YouTube because I can't remember. Here it is. It's something by
I
RT,
heard about the launch
by
Yuri
RT,
Gagarin and his flight around our Earth.
Jonathan
I thought
Dietrich,
this is
Jan Jorner, European Space Agency Director, has a video on RT. He's being interviewed by RT, and the title of the video is "We Are Not Alone in the Universe." Ex-European Space Agency Director tells RT. And he basically says what at least I have realized for some years, and I'm sure a lot of people have, but perhaps we haven't taken it all the way. And it is basically that it is not a question anymore if we're alone, or if there are other forms of intelligence in the universe. Basically, the minute we realized, we could have concluded and asserted that there are life forms possible, and that they definitely must exist, and everything that conclusion, that affirming conclusion leads to, as far as self-perception, simply by doing the math. You calculate that one single solar system has at least one planet where people are developing civilization, and then you realize that we already know that there are millions and millions and millions of stars, and that they all seem to have planets around them. We're finally confirmed that more over some 20 years ago. We started confirming this, and every year we see that more and more. Just think about this: we only can confirm the planets that are on a plane between us and the other star because they block the light as they transition up in front of the star. So that means that if the orbit is just a few degrees off, we don't see them because they're not blocking the light. That means that that means that as many planets as we think there are already, just by confirmation of what we're able to see transitions in front of stars, of the stars that we're able to perceive from here, see, for then start changing the angles, and all of those angles are just the same odds. As many planets are going around stars as there are angles 360 degrees around the star. So there are billions of planets and billions of stars, we know, and billions of galaxies. And so it's just a matter of saying, what are the odds that the universe is completely berserk and just decides to create something like us, and then everything else are rocks and nothing organic or living and thriving biologically? Zilch, zero. There are. It's not a question anymore. We know that there must be, there has to be, there are. We can scientifically affirm there is without confirmation or without any kind of study, just by crunching the probabilities. And once we conclude, we've never really gone past that. A lot of people have come close to affirming this. Most definitely there is life, most certainly, probably, very likely, but nobody has said there is, which takes a little bit of courage, because there aren't many scientific confirmations, I mean, assertions of something that has not been to some degree measured or witnessed or studied, or this is an assertion, a conclusive assertion based on probability and what we know just from looking at ourselves, just from looking at this world. And so it's just as good as looking at a planet and seeing people walking on it, and all that would cause us to all of a sudden go, oh my God, and watching them look at us, like looking at us, studying us, and seeing what we're doing. If we were to see that, if we were to see beings on another world looking at us and doing things about us, like looking at us and taking a measurement, and then looking at us again, and then talking to them amongst themselves and doing something about us because they are looking at us and talking about us, we would be probably speechless. Well, that is the reality of probability. We have never taken it further, but this is where, from this point on, is where it becomes compellingly interesting and ominous and humbling, and because you got to start thinking about, well, what do we see life does on our world? What do we do to one another? What do we do to other life forms? What are our intentions about? Because we always start off by acting all scientific and diplomatic and trying to put our best foot forward, but then what do we end up doing? We end up assaulting life, conquering people, displacing cultures, eating animals. I mean, that's the truth about our hypocrisies, or you could say, we have an idea of morality and ideal that we would like to be like, we dream of being like, but in reality, the proof, the pudding that is the proof of our earth shows that what we have continuously demonstrated to do is we're lost. We're destructive. We kill our own children in wars. We contaminate. We breathe contaminated air and smile on our way to work. That's our reality. We haven't learned to get a grip of ourselves as a species and say we're not going to breathe contaminated air anymore, nor kill our own offspring, and we're going to respect nations, and we're going to no longer poison our food, and we're going to distribute everything. We haven't been able to distribute everything equally among the population. The fruits of our intelligence will benefit the humanity as a whole from now on, because we're responsible for ourselves as a single we. We've never arrived there. So in part, that is the part of the explanation of why we're still hypocritical and self-destructive in so many ways, apparently without meaning to. In any case, so knowing this, you start to wonder, now that I already have the affirmation, the assertion that there is intelligent life, the first thought that comes to your mind is, well, that means that we are known. we're not hidden by a meteorite or anything, or in some dark recess of the universe that nobody can see us. There are many, probably. I mean, what are the first realizations that we would make as a humanity, as a species on this planet? We say, well, if indeed they have been watching us. The thing is, when you crunch the numbers and start thinking about the probabilities, not only can we affirm that there is other intelligent life in the universe, but that they have millions of other worlds have been evolving and developing 100, 1,000 times longer than us, 10,000 times longer than us on their worlds. So if we have achieved in these last 6,000 years what we have, the leap that we have given as far as our intelligence goes in these last 10,000 years compared to the hundreds of thousands of years that we've been evolving and just living amongst the animals. Imagine what another living intelligence can have achieved or could have gotten to, having been intelligent, in other words, writing and developing sciences and thinking about what to do with the universe for 100,000 years. And maybe in a world that everything, the scale is larger, where everything is just larger in that other scales of planetary systems. And add to that the fact that they have seen how all the other places where life and how life can arise in the universe, and what forms of life are typically. And so at that point, it's not even a question if they saw us or if they will or how many have discovered us. It is really past that point, and it puts us in the place of what have they done with us, and perhaps we were created. And the most logical, look at us. We're trying to clone life. We're trying to design life. It seems to be the impulse of intelligence is, as soon as you pass a certain critical point, we then also want to start creating life itself after being created by life. And so it stands to reason, and it's very likely that the tendencies of cognitive intelligence, which means perceiving the universe and engaging your intelligence as a living form with it, we'll have perhaps we share certain streams or tendencies, for example, to want to get our hands into life and either create life or modify life or play with just like we had that mentality towards ourselves, and we play with ourselves, and we try to we so before even being able to medically, we want to already change our gender, even if it means a sculpture. Just like bomb the body with male hormones or female hormones and shape the genitals, and we want to change our gender. Imagine a level of intelligence that has already surpassed that and can do stuff in their fetuses as soon as conception occurs, and they can see everything that body will be at every level genetically and just right after conception. They are beyond that. So and this is just staying at our level of imagination, because if you start thinking they are beyond that, we just have nothing that we're able to imagine. We can, just start getting silly and imagine things that have no. But just taking what we know and what we can deduce by everything that the world's history and our history in this world has shown us, seems to be the tendencies, the directionalities of life. There's a lot that we can directions that we can set down, like 2 or 3 steps in a line, and then just project and imagine 10 times or 100 times more of that. And that is a lot. Like, for example, knowing everything that everybody's going to be right after conception, for example. And so that means that now you have a whole new set of questions. We're past thinking if there is or there isn't life. Now we're at the level of saying, well, are they not interested? Have we been found, and we are just our type of life form is maybe proliferous, because we see that in nature. We see that the smaller and less evolved something is, the more numerous they are. So if you look at the probability tells you that there must be an immensely more developed forms of intelligence in the universe. We can't even reach, we can't even wrap our imagination around. But let's just kind of try to stay in a place that we can project from what we know a lot larger. These life forms, very likely one of them is, or one of them, like it happened in the world, seems to would have gone and overlorded over all other forms of life. It seems to be the structure. It's some kind of spirit, you could be analogous to a pyramidal structure of life forms in our own world, without even necessarily thinking of ourselves at the apex, but just looking at everything else. It's also very pyramidal. And so therefore, very likely that there's one life form that kind of knows that it is the top of the the top of the cosmic life chain, and we are in the realm of that life form. And so it stands to reason that we are either ignored because we're just so proliferous, our life form, or more than likely we are living part of their intentionality, either created entirely, either our world was modified so that we can live on it for because they wanted to have us live intentionally. They put us here in a sense. They stimulated evolution so that we would come forth, or that we were. This is kind of what happens in most world, where ohms or humans rise up. Perhaps there's another level of just like the mammals sort of superseded the reptiles. Maybe there's another life form but when you start thinking that way, it is very ominously humbling and enough to make you feel pretty stupid about how self-destructive we are and how little we actually, how arrogantly we confabulate our ideas, and wouldn't you know that it doesn't matter because we're so small also as far as living scales in the universe goes. But one thing we can do is, and this is where it starts relating to Gaia's humanism again. One thing we can do is look at our reality, look at just what we know, what we can see, what apparently is unchanging, unable to, unexceptional. The sun always comes up. You could defy God as we think of God, that tomorrow the sun will start going the other way, because we know it won't. There are things that are cosmic truisms that even our religious gods would have to concur that they can't mess with. In other words, there is a realm of realism that we can grab onto, is what I'm trying to say. And so in that sense, we can look at what is obviously the case. We know that we have a pattern, for example, regardless of how much we progress and invent and transform. There are things that are constantly keep on falling on our same problems and weaknesses and and meannesses and shortcomings, and our traits are, we love music and art, and that always flourishes also. And so there are things that we know we do, and there's one thing that really stands out, and that is that we are, compared to animals, I mean, dolphins apparently and whales have an amazingly developed brain. And so, but we can't really say that they are close to us, that we as a species are way out there compared to all the animals of the world. I mean, even dolphins and whales, they may be quite formidably developed compared to the rest of the animals on the planet. But and maybe there are streams of evolution and intelligence that are present in our world that show how intelligence can take different paths, develop not always so predictably like we think. The mind, the brain works, but we can see the dolphins and the cetaceans and whales. They show us that and it probably has to do with the fact that they evolved in the water, and our environment shapes us and shapes our brain too, and how that brain is going to think and function. And so, there can be, but all in all, there is something outstanding as far as the fact that we exist so uniquely and advantageously above all other animals. And which right there shows us something, because it's not like there's another species that's halfway in between us and the animals, that we're always sort of kicking around and, getting them out of the way, and they're feisty, and a second level, and we're the third level, and then there are animals. No, it's more like we're all the way here, and animals are all the way down there. We can do anything we want with animals. They can never have their way with us in any shape or form. And we could extinguish life in the world if we wanted to, and try to, and we probably wouldn't survive much longer. But it's always a possibility. So that huge distance between us and the rest of living conscious forms, intelligence conscious forms on the planet, tells us it seems like it's either what happens to all planets. One life form becomes super intelligent and kills everything that's close to it, and it creates a huge distance between it and all the other intelligent life forms. Or it was an intention. It was someone's or something's intention that we would exist alone on our world. And this is something we can call a cosmic truism or something like that. It is what we have to work with. And also, there isn't really anything that's saying you have to have wars and kill your babies and lock each other up and punish and have guns and kill each other. You have to. Evolution says you ought to. No, not really not. A lot of people like to support and justify what the pattern that we have always shown to repeat, but there isn't anything that forces us to have the world that we have only known so far. Our imagination could and can imagine a world that's different, where there aren't any poor people and hungry people, and it's not a utopia, ideal fantasy. No, it's actual fact. We have the capacity in our brain to design such a world. Whether it's difficult or it will be very challenging against ourselves to achieve it is a different matter. If it's very difficult for us, perhaps, but it doesn't mean that we're not capable of imagining and achieving that and actually making it possible. And knowing that, we also know that those that have either created or watching us or waiting for us, or maybe we're sort of like, it's very interesting because when you that have not done anything to impede that, there isn't a monolith in our brain that says, oh, just when we start living in peace, we bump into a wall, like somebody is intentionally not wanting us to live in peace. No, there isn't any evidence of that. So we can't say that our creator, or if you want to say God, or those that are much more intelligent around the universe watching us, you can't say that they have put constraints on us. And that is one of our cosmic realisms. There really isn't anything that says you can't find a way of living without wars. There are people who just don't want to think outside the box. They believe that we're animals, and so we're always going to be brutal and want to steal from each other, and that those tendencies to shortcomings where we may be perhaps destined because of our natural configuration to always be put against that challenge may very well be true. We may very well live in a constant state of imbalance, where it's always toiling and difficult to achieve those things that we can imagine. But it doesn't mean that we can't get there and then find a way to stay there, to sail at that altitude, and dealing with our tendencies and tendencies to unwittingly, unmeaning to that idealism, sabotage those ways by aspects of our more primitive nature that will always rise up because we're always in a constant state of instability. But it doesn't mean that we may not find a way that always we can exist in that sailboat that is constantly sailing on rough waves forevermore. Forevermore, a world of peace, of equal distribution, of advancement, of education and art and social dynamicism and what have you, uh, and and um, and it always be something that we're always having to work on, perhaps. But there's nothing that says there's nothing stopping us. This is what I'm trying to say. Um, and another interesting aspect. So once you start putting your imagination in the evolutionary scope of realism, of cosmic realism, you start taking other factors in to join your confabulations of what is possible or what may be the case. Obviously, we don't know what the case is. Is that intentional? Um, there are parts that seem to speak to ideas that float inside religion, like, for example, the idea of free will. If we were created by incredible beings that are very much like us, perhaps, but evolved more, and so there maybe we maybe spawns or seeds, that must go through the same development that they did, and the way that they spread themselves in the universe is by creating their own form, which is also perhaps a form of instability, a constant perpetual instability also, but except that they've been working it for 10,000 years times longer than we have. And so they maybe put their same body type or something similar, perhaps with something that's more the product of this world, but as similar as they are able to, because plants do that, for example. Plants grow a certain way in one continent, and then their spores and seeds go to another continent, and several hundreds of years later, they start looking different because they adapted to a different weather and different soil conditions. And so we may be close enough. And, when you read the Bible, that's what it says, in his image and, similar to God, like God in some ways. But, and it stands to reason that the only thing that gives you real pasta, real substance, is when you, like kids, like raising your child, discover yourself through your own making, through your own risking the mistake and maybe making a mistake and then finally getting it right and then building on top of that. Is this affirming making of our thinking and of development is necessary for things to be real. Just like children, you can box your children in and not have it do anything risky or wrong and always behave a certain way. But then when they have to go out into the world, right, they have no experience, they have no substance to work their wisdom or their intuition in a way that they know what to do. They're just kind of like little plants that have always been tied to a stick, and then when you finally remove the stick, the wind blows, it gets knocked over. The plant needs to grow up in the wind in order to become robust and strong, a tree. And this is true for each one of us. And it's true also, for example, between countries, between peoples. A country that is always told what to do and has to follow a certain doctrine or follow a certain political doctrine, or is blinded by the powerful countries, doesn't get to develop itself, not to mention if they're invaded or conquered and run like a colony. But even if that is not the case, they need to go, wait, I discovered this and I built on they have to do what every child does in order to grow up strong. Countries also need that, but that's a whole other subject. And so, if you look at these aspects, um, they could be just watching us and not letting us know that they can see us and they're watching us every day, or they're doing little adjustments here and there. They just need us to live in the ignorance of them, whatever them is, right? Because that is how we can grow strong and finally, for example, get to to the the phase or the point where we say, "Oh, we are responsible for ourselves. We are not born evil, and some people we got to deal with the devil, and people are bad or something." It's always our doing. We do this to ourselves. We raise our people to become the way they do. There's no other accountability outside of ourselves, which would disarm or dilute, I don't know, or deactivate all religions, because all religions put the accountability of our nature, part of it, half of it, bad, our bad side, outside, it came from the outside. It's just the way we were created to. We have this problem that we don't understand. Well, we do understand it. We do understand that there's an imbalance between this amazing capacity, intelligent capacity we have, and what our primitive nature keeps steering us off, and we got to deal with that relationship, the relationship of our primitive intelligence and our very, very high capacity intelligence. And when you realize that we are that relationship, where it's not an external trick that was played on us, that we don't know why, but we know we can't get it together and we can't exist as a single species. We're just always going to fight and always want to hit the other. We believe that because we think that our problems, our sufferings, our evil, our bad, whatever, are things that have nothing to do with us, but they just came, we inherited them, or it was our creator's will or something. But when we realize that that these things happen to us because of something we haven't figured out yet, of this imbalance of our existential condition, then all of a sudden we own our difficulty, the challenge of using our very capable intelligence well, the right way, to benefit our species as a whole, and no longer are we victim and vulnerable to something we don't understand, where bad or evil or devil comes from, or what's animal nature. We always want to kill each other or something. We don't have to believe that. We have answered the question. Well, I don't want to repeat another video I made, but because this is about contemplating what our reality, cosmic reality, may really be, knowing that there is lots of intelligent life in the universe, and that maybe we are, which very much seems we are the realm of one very superior species, or maybe our fathers, the ones that are making us develop and reach them, or get to be as close to them, or be them, or something like that. But in any case, we've never known something that comes to the world and tries to rock this boat, and really, and something else comes and tries to defend it and protect it. Although we could be a joint venture. I've read that in some book, in some science, something fiction book, that we could be sort of a place where there are several intelligences. Oh yeah, I forgot what I was going to before. Um, there is once we start thinking in this very realistic, cosmic, realistic, existentially realistic way, there is another scientific reality, which aspect of understanding the billions of possibilities of life evolving in billions of other planets, which also this man mentioned. I just had his name. Now I don't see it anymore. Um, and it is the great distance, the enormous distance that it does seem that perhaps that could be a barrier. And this is what he mentioned. Perhaps we're just too far um, to actually, for them to have to come over here and created us and come back and forth and watch us all the time or something. It's just the distances are too humongous for that. Well, then of course that becomes smaller as you realize just how much bigger or more intelligent or advanced other intelligent life forms may be. But still, distance seems to be a factor. So one of the things that comes to my imagination, thinking at this scale, is that perhaps they can't actively be engaging us all the time, continuum, like saying, okay, oh, stop him before he does that. But they can prepare something and get it over to other worlds. They can prepare a story, for example, a Swiss mechanical something, something biologically speaking, of course. Something that will develop, like dropping a kind of a component or some ingredients, and then knowing that they will have a certain reaction, and then when a certain phase is done, then another phase is sent over, and so that seems to be another element of imagination, given that this. But anyways, the reason I made this video is to bring a more realistic, to inspire people to think more cosmically, realistically, past the point of whether there are or there aren't. Yes, there is intelligent life, and which means we're not unknown at all. We carry on thinking that we're unknown, but we're not unknown. Which is very different to believing in God, because it's something completely different. Religions say God is just have faith, just lower your head and be thankful or whatever, or try not to do this or try not to give into evil, God. But it doesn't make us free. Religions don't really give us the freedom to progress. Because we're always kind of limping, we always got to watch out for that, which we don't understand. Why do you have to just have compassion, because our children will get killed in wars, and so you have to try to, it's not quite, doesn't really quite do anything big in a real and an all-encompassing way. Religions are just a way of atoning a little bit, try to be a little nicer, not suffer so much about our predicament. But this kind of cosmic realism is freeing, because we can actually stop being mean to one another and killing one another and selfishly running away with goods and not caring about who we kill or who we leave in poverty. And we actually can. It's not something that we were condemned to put up with, but to do that, of course, we have to also wake up the perception of a single collective being, the human being, the species, and start looking at each other that way. Like look at somebody that speaks a different language and say, you and me, we know we are one, and this, which is what we've been saying for a long time. But this is a way of kind of articulating it scientifically, realistically, with scientific realism. why we are actually one, because we are one. We are one that doesn't know it's one, didn't know, and don't know. Many don't. Anyways, so yep, that's what I wanted to contribute with, and ciao.